Welcome to Soul of Travel. I'm so happy today to be joined from Italy today by Alessandra Alonso. She's the founder of Women in Travel, and this is a conversation I have just been patiently and anxiously awaiting for about a year. So I'm so happy that we're finally able to sit down and make this work. And for those of you listening, Women in Travel is a UK-based award-winning social enterprise dedicated to empowering all women using travel, tourism, and hospitality as a force for good. And for those of you that are regular listeners, you know that is like singing the song of my heart. And that is part of why this conversation is so important, I think, to have on Soul of Travel. So welcome today to the show.
Thank you very much, Christine, and thank you for having me. I'm really honored and delighted to be here.
Thank you. Well, to begin the conversation, I would love for you just to take a moment to introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us a little bit about Women in Travel and your background, then we'll move forward from there.
Yes, sure. So I'm Alessandra, as you already said, and I am the founder of Women in Travel CIC. Women in Travel is a social enterprise. Our mission is to economically empower women using travel, tourism, hospitality as a force for good. My background is in travel and tourism. I have over 20 years in the sector, and for the best part of it, or at least a half of it, I have been working to support women and women empowerment. I started at the European Commission as a trainee. I hadn't chosen tourism, as often seems to be the case with this sector, but ended up in tourism because I was passionate about Europe and European ideals, and I spoke languages. So someone thought that tourism would be a good sector for me. And interesting enough, I actually ended up working for a small unit that, you won't be surprised, was understaffed and under-resourced, but that meant that I got to learn a lot, because even though I was a trainee, they needed me to do proper work. And so I really enjoyed it. And when I went back to London, as I was originally, I actually moved on to the World Travel and Tourism Council, and then to KPMG, where I practically set up the tourist division in the UK, and then did a lot of work in Europe as well. And it is around that time that I really started to realize the scarcity of women. So, I was working with many companies. I was working in the cities in a fairly male-dominated environment. And I very quickly realized that I was often the only woman in the room. Although, as you know, in fact, the majority of the sort of global workforce in tourism and travel and hospitality across the sector is female. So looking into that, I really began to understand that the sector was rife with inequality and disparity, and eventually set up the very first gender consulting in travel and tourism called Shine, and also the Shine Awards for Women Achievement in Travel, Tourism and Hospitality, which I co-founded back in 2004. And I actually, at that point, got really the opportunity to understand how much work was there to be done, in this arena. When I moved on from Shine and the awards were taken over by the Sector Skills Council, I thought that there wouldn't be further need, because the sector was becoming a lot more aware of what was going on in terms of gender diversity and the inequality. More women were coming up the ranks. But actually quickly was sort of told by the many women I used to meet that actually there was a lot of need still for the support and the mentoring and the coaching that we were doing with Shine. And so eventually I started to run events, and because this event brought together an amazing community of women and really showed the power of collaboration, the power of sisterhood, the power of getting women together, I decided to eventually set up Women in Travel, But this time I also thought that I wanted to really focus on the women who were nowhere near the table. So yes, there are a lot of women who still feel perhaps they are not fully contributing, they're not having the full opportunity to contribute to the sector. But actually, there is a huge pool of women who are totally invisible. They don't even know that the table is out there and that they can access, they can eventually have a seat. So nowadays, Women in Travel as a social enterprise works with quite a broad range of women, and they go from the highly vulnerable and marginalized, those who might have experienced, modern slavery or domestic abuse, or, who are refugees and really need support with access and network and confidence in the first place, all the way to women who feel they are underrepresented, or perhaps they don't have any support in their country, or, where they are. So we try and support quite a range of women. And we are now 5 years old. We are going to publish our first impact report this year, and I'm really excited about that. And we've had some success. I am proud of what we have achieved. We have a small team, but the impact is, high. And I think it's all to do with the fact that women really work with the community, for the community. And when a woman earns, many more people benefit.
Yeah. Thank you so much for beginning to paint that picture of women in travel and the work that you do. I think that it's so important, I think, for people who are not in the industry, and even some people in the industry, to understand the layers of tourism and who's involved and what it takes to make travel and tourism happen. And I think I've talked a little bit about this on previous conversations, but as travel consumers, we just see the top of this pyramid and the peak of these experiences. And we don't really understand necessarily what it takes to make every type of experience happen. And there's workers at all levels of the sector that are contributing to that. And like you said, many of those workers are women, and especially as you kind of move out from the moment of the experience, those workers become more invisible. And so, like you said, that these women sometimes don't even know that they're a part of this industry because they feel and are perceived to be so far removed from the end experience. So I really love that.
And if I may add, Christine, to this, because I think you're touching upon a very important point. And that's exactly the point. I think what we find, especially with the most marginalized, is that there is very little understanding of the industry and what's involved. There is very little understanding of the opportunities that the industry makes available, and what employment or work in industry looks like. And actually, we talk about women, but of course, over the years, we've increased our reach in terms of diversity and inclusion. And that's really what we focus on. Our focus is women, but we absolutely do not want to leave anyone behind. And women really are at the heart of the community. They are host, they are guest. And, I think that's also the reason why the sector resonates so much, because ultimately we are opening our homes, we are welcoming people into our house, we are offering food, and never mind where you are in the world or your culture, women tend to have their role. So there is also an intuitive understanding of the sector. But as a sector, we definitely need to do better, not only when it comes to including and shining a light on everyone. We can also do better, under the sort of in the aspect of having a cohesive approach to, to talent, to management, cohesive and inclusive, to making sure that everybody can reach their full potential, because the sector needs all the talent it can get.
This just reminded me of an experience I had at a conference that I attended in Africa, in Uganda, probably, oh gosh, I don't even know. I think probably 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And that aside, there to kind of talk about what tourism can do. And this was in the lens of tourism being a vehicle for peace. And I think very much in the same vein of this is, how can it be a force for good, right? Like, how can travel do something beyond this idea of just creating experiences or allowing for vacation and relaxation? Like, what else is there in the context of travel? And I remember sitting in this group of people where we were meant to be coming and sharing our insights and wisdom. And as I sat at this group of in this group amongst this community, I like so quickly realized that I wasn't the leader in the room. I wasn't the leader in the space. I wasn't the person that had any of the answers for the things that they were facing. And it was a very humbling moment, but also a really empowering moment to know, I mean, this was literally a table, right? So I was like, these are the people who need to be at the table for these conversations. And the power and the passion of the conversations, the engagement, and that sense of community was something that has stayed with me for the rest of my career since then. It was so powerful. And so I really love what you're talking about, how we need to, I think we make a lot of assumptions about what people can contribute based on their economic status, or like you said, making sure that we're being inclusive and not creating those levels of ranking of people based on an assumed authority or education, or, you know, like really dismissing all of those stereotypes and having a authentic, connective conversation, and then saying, what can tourism do? What can we allow for it to do? What do you need it to do for you? And then how can you be a player in that? And I think Women in Travel has really allowed for people to have those conversations, bring them together. We'll talk later about some of the mentorship that you offer, but I think that's like kind of where this starts, is like you said, bringing everyone to the table. And I just really want to invite people who don't have a broader experience in the industry to understand who that means. And like you said, you know, it might be women in a village who are welcoming people into their homes and telling the stories of their communities. Like, that is for me, that's everything in travel, but that's a really critical piece to making travel valuable, I think. And it might be something that's overlooked in a mainstream picture of tourism.
Absolutely. And I mean, we have some experience of that, because we started to develop some tours in conjunction with Intrepid last year. And we identify and then trained 3 ladies who we met through our program, who came from sort of a multicultural background, quite disadvantaged, quite marginalized, and created tours that offer an insight into their community, although they are London-based. And as you know, Women in Travel is London-based. And we, you know, what they did, which I think is absolutely amazing, is this ability of offering insights into their community, into their culture and tradition, breaking down the silo, creating connection, whilst actually delivering tours that are around the corner from many of us. You know, you can experience Ethiopian tradition in Shepherd's Bush Market in West London, or, you know, the Balkans culture on the South Bank. And what that tells you is that the power of telling your story, and the power of sort of a narrative that it's about you and your community, you don't necessarily have to be on a, you know, on a long haul flight to do that if you empower the people to tell their stories. And I think that feeling of being able to share your culture, your tradition, your personal stories and insight is really powerful. It's powerful for the visitor, and it's powerful for, you know, the ladies who deliver the experience, because it reconnects them with their own community, and it benefits their community in a way that, you know, perhaps normally doesn't happen. You know, I guess that it's very hard for, you know, if I think about Londoners, I wonder how many know about the Ethiopian community. And yet, you know, London being such a multicultural city, it is really possible to have this true and genuine experience and understand and get insights that are phenomenally interesting, relevant, and as I was saying, empowering.
I think I love that the pandemic has kind of opened those doors to us, or made us look in our backyard for
Yeah.
these experiences and stories and connections that we have, like you said, kind of overlooked. We may not know that they exist, and yet they really should be one of the most important parts of what our community stands for, because a lot of, you know, most cities have a multicultural, you know, base. They have all of these things that they could be drawing on, and instead of kind of making this more homogenized society, like, we can be celebrating these things that we have to offer within our communities. And I think that adds, like you said, it's very empowering to the storyteller. It adds a real sense of value and purpose to preserving that cultural identity and being really proud in where we come from. And so I think that's a part of what travel allows for in general. But I love, like, looking at it, like you said, kind of on this more immediate scale, where we don't have to seek so far away to have these experiences. And so I think that that's been a really fun thing to witness all over the globe, is people exploring their own cultures and seeing what already exists there.
Yeah.
Well, we started talking about why you created the company. I wanted to talk a little bit more about about the social enterprise. Sorry, why you really felt it was so important to support this industry and women in specific. I mean, I feel like, and much like you said, people land in travel by happenstance often, but this why that we have that brings us here, supporting women. I know this has been, like, I feel like I was imprinted with that why as well. I remember being a child and, like, already kind of being drafting this mission, right? Like, I knew this was my purpose, but I didn't know anything about what that meant. But I wonder when did you really connect that within your own journey, that you knew this is what you were going to do?
Yeah, I love this question. Thank you, Christine. I think that I enjoyed travel. I was lucky enough to grow up in a family of people who also enjoyed traveling, mostly in Europe, mostly by car at the time. But, you know, discovery other cultures and exploring was part of my sort of family DNA. I think that what I discovered later on in life, and sort of when as a grown up, was my social mission. And I guess that I certainly sort of, my passion is certainly supporting women. My passion is supporting women who can sort of realize their potential, fully contribute to society. I hate the fact that for a variety of reasons, there are still so many women and sort of non-binary individuals out there who are almost wasting their gifts because of a lack of opportunity, or because there is nobody that asks them the question, what would you like to do? What can you do? And how far do you want to go? And I think travel and tourism and hospitality. I come from the WTTC school and therefore think about the sector quite holistically, provides a fantastic opportunity for impact to be created, for the social impact, for mobility, for opportunities to be created. And the reason is, first and foremost, because as a sector, there are very low barriers to entry. Now, of course, that also means that perhaps the pay and at starting level is quite sometimes low compared to other sectors. But at the same time, it is also true that you can progress quite fast. So what we find is that women who wouldn't normally, have the confidence or the courage perhaps to approach other sector because they don't feel they have the qualification, and can quickly drum up the courage and the confidence to think, actually, I can do this. First of all, because I know what it means to welcome guests and to host. And secondly, because actually I can start in a way that is not too daunting for me. And then I can work my way up. So a lot of the opportunities that we see sort of being taken by our beneficiary, particularly the one at more marginalized, at pretty much at entry level. But there are some fantastic stories of success, of promotion, of women sort of who have been sort of given the opportunity to start somewhere, and through that first opportunity then fly and shine and go on to develop further, to perhaps they move on, maybe they discover sort of their full passion. But that's, that the sector is quite unique in this way, because if you look at others, they will put many more barriers to entry.
Yeah, I
so
think that's a really
that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry to interrupt.
No, I was saying, so that's one of why I felt that actually, well, on the one hand, you have a lot of women in the sector. On the other, talent is scarce and there is a war for talent going on. So, let's try and create opportunity for matching and meeting the needs of the sector, while in the same time giving, women opportunities. And the result is that, you create really more a workforce that is more engaged, more loyal, and with women in particular, once sort of they get the opportunity and they see that the employer believes in them, there is a real desire to succeed.
Yeah, that just within what you were saying just brought about so many memories of me in travel, being able to witness that. And I think again, it's maybe not as easy to understand if you haven't had that opportunity. But I remember I work a lot with artisan groups when I travel. That's who I like to connect with and bring my women's groups to meet, because I feel like it allows for an understanding of culture and connection, but it also really brings in this unique, rich perspective. And I was sitting in circle with a group of artisans, and we were drawing our why, and we wanted to share like what is our why, and why we're committed to what we want to do. And there was a young girl who had just joined this artisan cooperative, and she walked in just a few minutes late and sat down as we were drawing these pictures. And then we all got up and shared, and there was a translator for those that couldn't speak English to help share the stories. And you saw when she walked in, like she was kind of nervous, maybe a little bit intimidated, because there was foreigners and people she didn't recognize. And she also didn't fully understand where she was yet, because she had just kind of started this training program. And you started to see, as people were going through this process and sharing their why, like how her body energy shifted just being a part of that circle. And you could feel her realizing what she stepped into and all of the opportunity that started laying itself in front of her, just like over the course of this hour. And it was so powerful to just see this shift of possibility and witness it through her eyes. And then 2 days later, I happened to meet her on the street, and she gave me a big hug. And it was as if, this sense of belonging and possibility that she had was like wrapped around her. And it
Yeah,
was just amazing. And it's not always the largest action, but it creates the largest ripple. And
absolutely.
I think, like you
Uh,
said, women are so engaged in their community that she's probably going to go and tell, her sisters or friends and community about this experience. And then that's where I think we really see women in travel, especially in that level, creating such a dynamic shift and impact.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, we are there to help our community of beneficiaries identify income generation opportunities and employment opportunities through travel, tourism, and hospitality. But one of the things that we always do, and that sort of your story kind of reminded me of, is the coming together in the mentoring. And whether it's, mentoring group, mentoring circle, or one-to-one, mentoring sits at the heart of everything that we do. And what you find is that when women come together, there is this spark, this magic that is being created because their focus is never on themselves. It's always on supporting and helping others. So what you get is, how can I help you? Where do you hurt? And how can I support you with your challenges or your issues? And so I think immediately there is this kind of, sisterhood being created. And it kind of provides a network, it provides a support, and it provides a source of inspiration and belonging. And as you were saying, so I absolutely am not surprised by what you've just described, because that's what we experience in our mentoring circle and in sort of mentoring interventions all the time. And often, although the training program that we run sort of provide the women with valuable skills, often the things that really sticks with them is the mentoring.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that is definitely, I think that's actually how I first was connected to you. And during the pandemic, the amount of mentoring that Women in Travel shifted to create was immense. And watching that unfold over the internet and seeing what was happening, I was really like, what is this community? This is incredible.
Yeah.
I believe that mentoring is like the absolutely most important thing that we need in our lives, whether it's in businesses, personally or professionally. That's how humans can like share and connect. And so I was really excited to see that platform, but I would love for you to talk a little bit more about mentorship and especially what that meant during, or has meant during, this continued pandemic.
Yeah, sure. So mentoring is really at the heart of what we do. In fact, mentoring sort of became the core area of work for Shine when I co-founded Shine all those years ago, 2004. And I think that at the time, especially here in the UK, mentoring was something that the industry would do, but possibly very informally and possibly not sort of in a way that was cohesive or sort of structured. And when we interviewed and sort of worked with women, we kept on hearing that mentoring was the one thing that they felt was missing from the training and development that the industry might offer. And that there was a big difference with men who seemed to be regularly mentored and regularly perhaps sponsored or supported by other peers and by their seniors. So we started to work on mentoring, and in fact I qualified myself as a mentor in those days, and I really haven't looked back since, because mentoring has been a constant source of fulfillment and discovery and appreciation, and really fantastic outcomes for me as a mentor, but also for those who experience, for what I've learned from other during the process of mentoring, because mentoring, it's always a two-way relationship. And during the pandemic, we felt that, right at the beginning, there were so many women who knocking at the door saying, I feel really upset, or I'm really scared, or I've just lost my job, or I'm about to lose my job, or my income is gone. What do I do next? And we started to run this mentoring circle just to try and give some support, to tell the women, look, you're not on your own. There is a community out here, and you can absolutely be part of it, and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And eventually we actually got some funding to run some more mentoring programs and some more sort of circle. And we haven't really stopped. And so we regularly run mentoring in and out, sort of into companies, sometimes outside. And, it is a fantastic way for women to come together, share their viewpoint, and appreciate, collaborate, ask questions, find answers, without fear of being judged, without fear of being sort of deemed inappropriate or stupid. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And in total sort of confidential, in a socially confidential and safe environment. So we are massive believer of mentoring, and we are absolutely, what can I say? We are absolutely adamant that is one of the best ways to develop women.
Thank you for sharing that. I agree. I feel like there's just endless opportunities, and like you said, it's such an even exchange, and it's a different dynamic than coaching or a business training, or like it's so deeply personal. It's much more intimate, and it
Yeah.
just allows for this great way to connect, and like you said, during this time, just make it through. Really, I've been a part of a couple different women's communities, and I think without that, I don't know that I would still be sitting here in this
Yeah.
industry today. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a really rough go, obviously. And so I think that's so important. So I just really appreciate that component. The other programs that you offer with women in travel are your employability and entrepreneurship. Would you mind talking a little bit about both of those so our listeners can understand that as well?
Absolutely. So basically, Women in Travel is based on two pillars. One pillar is program, and the other one is community. So the programs are employability, where we support sort of marginalized women or women who are vulnerable to find employment. The second one is enterprising, and particularly focusing on the tour guide. And so creating also micro entrepreneurship, which is something that, again, I'm quite passionate about. And I think there's plenty of opportunity and need for it in travel and tourism, and particularly on the sort of women's side. And then mentoring, coaching that is really pervasive, and sort of it wraps around everything that we do. The other side is community. And so the multicultural community, what used to be called the BAME Women in Travel community, but we have now renamed multicultural because we think it's a much more inclusive terminology. And also the male allyship network is the other community, because we think it's very important to get men to be part of this conversation, and to make sure that men are understanding and supportive of sort of gender diversity and inclusion. So I don't know if this answered exactly what you had asked me, but the idea is that sort of we run programs that lead to employment or income generation when it comes to entrepreneurship. And as I was saying, the tour guide is one sector that we are and one we're focusing on, because we feel that, there is, across the world, tour guiding is done in very different way, but there is an opportunity and a need for, more personal, more local, more, if you like, customized type of tours that offer insights and memorable sort of moments and experiences to do with, you know, community and culture that are perhaps different from our own. And those don't require, you know, jumping on a flight. They can be done much closer home, and therefore they are also very much of their time. And this fits very well also with a lot of the women that we see, because often the women are juggling a variety of sort of needs and a variety of sort of situations. So, you know, I'm thinking about a single household with children. So obviously there'll be, you know, the need for flexibility. And so tour guiding in a way offers that kind of flexibility and the ability to run a business on your own terms. So it is quite suitable and appealing to many of the beneficiaries that we see.
Yeah. I had an interview focused on tour guides and the importance, and it was such a just, I think, really brilliant and conversation in an area that we don't focus a lot, a very underlooked segment of the industry, and especially the way you're speaking about it, where this allows, again, for this storytelling and this connection, when you can bring in local tour guides who are really, maybe all they do is talk about their neighborhood or their region or their village or their community. They don't have to be super specialized. So this allows that entry barrier, like you said, to be lower, but it also increases the value of the experience like tenfold, 100-fold, because of this perspective that they can only offer. And I love that that is one of the focuses that you have. I did want to talk a little bit more about the male allyship network. You briefly mentioned that, but I know this is also something, especially with my conversations being women focused, talking a lot about gender equality and reducing inequality, that bringing male voices into the conversation is critical to creating that equality. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about your motivation behind that network and what that's offering.
Sure. So the Male Allyship Network is something that sort of is relatively new. It was launched before the summer on the back of a roundtable with about 30 senior male leaders that happened during the International Women in Travel and Tourism Forum, which is our annual event. And I think that there is a desire to sort of be part of that conversation on the part of senior male leaders. I think that there is a often sort of an aspect almost of, I don't want to say fear, but discomfort about getting in those conversations freely, because it is often the case, you know, senior leaders are often male, they are often similar to each other, you know, not much diversity there either. And they tend to feel almost cornered, you know, almost pointed at as the, you know, as the guilty ones. And it was quite liberating, actually, I think, to hear so many of them saying, oh, I absolutely want to be part of the conversation, and I absolutely want to be of support and help and mentor a woman, because as you know, as you become an ally, you have the opportunity to mentor someone. But actually, I almost see the more value in being mentored by the woman. So there is, again, this two-way conversation that opens up opportunity for learning. But, you know, yes, you know, from the women, on the part of the women, but also on the part of the senior allies. So the idea is that, you know, we come together, we have a network. At the moment, it's about 15, 18 senior leaders. Some of them are chief executives, some of them are senior directors, and, you know, they are British, but not only. So it is an international network. And the idea is that, you know, they gain an opportunity to acquire gender intelligence and understanding. And this understanding is very valuable to them, because being at the top, of some large and sort of international companies, they have often, if you like, left the shop floor, but still need to know about, what does it feel like to be a woman in the sector? What does it feel like to be looking for your next opportunity or promotion? Or perhaps, you are an entrepreneur looking to scale up her business. So I think that this is a great opportunity to hear from a greater variety of voices, but also to tap into the senior leaders' expertise. And it's interesting that, many of the women are saying, I feel that I really lack a male perspective, and someone who is that senior and has navigated a career has so much to offer. And so we invite male leaders to become part of this network. And we have as an objective this year, 2022, to add another 25 internationally. And then at that point, they become available to mentors. So the call, it's also for action. It's also on women to think about, sending their sort of request for a mentor, and then, seeing what great opportunity may come with having someone who is there to support you, someone who has huge experience of the industry, who might be sitting at the top of a large company, and that in any case is dedicated to your goal.
Mm-hmm. It's so brilliant. It just makes me so excited to hear how that has shaped. And I can think of, working in the industry in companies. Usually it was a male CEO or COO, and really knowing that they've grown up within the industry, that they started perhaps in a company at the bottom, maybe especially where I worked in adventure travel. They started as these people who were just, explorers and adventurers who were excited about travel. And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but, they worked their way as this company grew. So like you said, they have this wealth of experience. But me as an entry level worker, as a female, there was definitely this barrier that I wasn't allowed to access this wealth of knowledge, even though I was really curious about what their experiences were, what they'd learned, what they could see as the future of travel. But there wasn't a space for that connection, or where that would be an appropriate dialogue, for so many reasons. So I can only imagine. And again, like you said, going both ways, maybe this person would love to share their experience, but they feel like maybe that's inappropriate to cross these levels of either gender or roles within a company, because of the ways things are structured these days, that they can't do that. So I think this just, I'm so excited to see what this allows for, and growth for both the male allies and the women participating in this group.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's creating the platform is almost, giving the permission to be involved in the conversation, whereas they might not do for a variety of reasons if the platform hadn't been created. So I'm really grateful to the senior leaders who came together, who thought that this would be a good idea and something they wanted to be involved, because I think it can be very powerful. So I look forward to seeing how it develops in 22.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for everything that you've shared so far. I want to make sure that people know where they can reach out and connect with you at Women in Travel. You briefly mentioned the International Women in Travel and Tourism Forum, but if you could share a little bit more about that and how people can learn more, and then I have a few questions at the end.
Definitely. So, obviously our website as a point of reference, womenintravelcic.com, it's available. People should feel free to contact me, Alessandra at womenintravelcic.com. And there are, we have two large events or two bigger events that we run yearly. One is the International Women in Travel and Tourism Forum that we hope will take place in person this year for the third time. And it's likely to happen before the summer. Unfortunately, we don't have a fixed date yet that I can announce, but watch this space, is going to be soon. And then the other event is the Multicultural Summit that tends to take place in October during Black History Month here in the UK. But, you know, the mentoring circles are open. Networking is also happening on a regular basis. And there are several opportunities to get involved. If you are an employer and you are listening to this, please get in touch. If you are a woman and you are thinking, I could benefit from mentoring or from a male allyship sort of relationship, please get in touch and we'll do our best to support you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has just been such a delightful conversation. I always end my conversations with a series of rapid fire questions, and they're more based on you as a traveler, so people get to know you. So we'll end with those 7 questions. The first is, what is your favorite book or movie that offers you a travel escape or inspires adventure?
I think the El Camino, one of the film, you know, on the Santiago de Compostela route. That's a fantastic film that really inspires, and I think it does really embodies the spirit of transformational travel.
What is always in your suitcase when you travel?
I would say a pashmina, because never mind where you go, you find a way to use it, whether it's, you know, to cover your shoulder or to sit on, or I find that it's ever so helpful to have in your suitcase.
That's one of my top recommendations to women who travel with me as well. So what has been your favorite destination?
Oh my God, I have so many. I mean, I'm lucky enough to come from one of the most beautiful cities in the world, Florence. That must be a top destination, although I call it, obviously it's home for me, but it's always beautiful to go back to Florence. I have absolutely loved Thailand, and particularly the Chiang Mai region. I found it very creative, very unique. I also, my husband is Spanish, and I also love Spain. And I have some fantastic memories of Rioja and also of Andalusia.
Thank you. I love Chiang Mai as well. I was so surprised when I went to Thailand. It was one of the places I wanted to go, but I wasn't sure why. And in the end, ended up being like one of my favorite places that I spent time in. Where do you still long to visit?
I think I would love to go to Peru. That's one of my bucket list destinations.
So beautiful. What do you eat that immediately connects you to a place you've been?
I love food, and I'm a very curious eater. I think food is absolutely part of your travel experience. So I think eating local with the locals is the best.
Yes, agreed. And sometimes you don't even know what you're eating, and it's magical when you have those experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who is the person that inspired or encouraged you to set out and explore the world?
Well, I think in terms of travel as an industry, I think the person who really inspired and who was probably my mentor in the early days was Philip Mann, who used to be the president of the WTTC and is still a very active member of the travel and tourism community, passionate about environment and sustainable tourism. I think he showed me the beauty of the travel and tourism sector. In terms of actual travel, are you thinking of a person who inspires me to travel?
Yeah, just whoever kind of showed you the way or got you excited about travel.
Well, in all honesty, I think my parents did that. As I mentioned at the beginning, we would travel every summer. We would jump in the car and my father would drive around Europe, and we would spend time visiting France or Germany. In the 80s, we went all the way to Turkey. From Italy, it was a 3 weeks journey and quite an experience. Greece. So I think, yes, I would say that my parents have always encouraged me to explore, definitely.
Yeah, I love hearing about European road trips of my guests that grew up in Europe, and it's mind-boggling to me to think about driving to Turkey or something like that because
Yeah,
growing up in the US, we don't really, you just drive for days and you're still in the United States. So I love that it's
yeah.
mind-boggling and
The
exciting to me.
diversity is amazing.
Yeah. If you could take an adventure with one person, fictional or real, alive or past, who would it be?
Um, that's a very good question. I think, I don't know if it's an adventure, but I would have loved to be in London with the suffragettes, to explore, London and to be part of their struggle. We owe so much to them. I also, and we mentioned Celine Cousteau before, our podcast started, but, I grew up with Jacques Cousteau doing some fantastic, dives, and I love water, I love the sea, and I grew up enjoying the sea. So that would have been an amazing experience.
Yeah. Um, yes, I agree. And my one of my people would be to adventure actually with Celine because the way she engages with Indigenous communities and
Yeah.
her passion for travel is so aligned with mine. So well, thank you so much again for joining me, for sharing so much about your journey and women in travel. And I hope that people listening have really been inspired to start to engage in community and connection this way.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely being on the podcast, and thank you again for this opportunity. And look forward to seeing what comes next on your podcast and following them.
Thank you.
Thank you.